With reconciliation talks carrying over into November, some of President Biden's key policies of the Build Back Better agenda are heading to the chopping block. Friend of the show, David Sirota, joined Brian Stelter on Reliable Sources Sunday with a message for journalists covering the negotiations. Follow the money.
And his social safety net bill and how his battle to get it through Congress, how it's being covered in the press. Your number one critique.
My number one critique is that there hasn't been a lot of following of the money. That if you pay attention to the conversation in the media, there hasn't been a lot of context about which industries are buying which politicians. You see the parties fighting with each other. You see the pieces of the Democratic coalition fighting with each other. But removed from much of the story is the fact that the oil industry, the fossil fuel industry is pumping a lot of money into this. The pharmaceutical industry is pumping a lot of money into this. Many of the members of Congress who are trying to kill Democrats' promised prescription drug plan, they have taken a huge amount of money from the pharmaceutical industry. So writing the money behind the bill out of the story of the bill is a huge problem. And it doesn't give viewers and readers the context that they need.
In that same interview, he said that the corporate media was failing, and he was proud that he had done it on the corporate media. We here at Rising are proud of him for having done that. Stephen Semler, co-founder of the Security Policy Reform Institute and writer of the Substack Speaking Security, has done his own kind of following the money. In his latest Substack piece, Semler draws dramatic conclusions on which initiatives members of Congress are willing to put dollars behind and which ones they aren't. As social spending programs are stripped or altogether nixed from the reconciliation package, military spending accounts for 55% of discretionary funds appropriated by the Democratic-controlled Congress for the fiscal year 2002.
According to Semler, Congress has spread $115 billion in military allocations across 11 pieces of budgetary legislation, and that's on top of the $728 billion National Defense Authorization Act, totaling a whopping $846 billion in Pentagon funding for next year. Joining us now to expand is Stephen Semler. Glad to have you back on Rising.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me again.
So this is something I've accused Republicans of hypocrisy on a lot, but there's plenty of hypocrisy to go around. For anyone who pretends to care about the debt or spending and everything, I mean, look at the military budget. It's insane. It's off the charts.
Right, and I think now's a good time to sort of diffuse any notion that there are any true fiscal conservatives in Congress at all, on either the Democratic side or the Republican side. I mean, Joe Manchin, the holdout, or one of the main characters in this sort of holdout drama, the reconciliation bill, has voted for every military budget since he's been in Congress, or since he's had the opportunity to. The cost of those budgets totals over $7.5 trillion, which is well over 4 times the current status of the reconciliation bill. So, yeah, I mean, it's just that military spending plays by a different set of rules. And when the media reports on who is and who isn't fiscally responsible or fiscally conservative, that judgment only comes down to social spending and not militarized spending. So I tried to kind of point that out there with my latest piece.
Right, and it's something that obviously is coming up now as they're arguing over every proposal, and Joe Manchin is kind of striking them out as he sees fit. But there's no reckoning with. So is this on progressives to make this point more loudly, especially at a time when we're winding down in Afghanistan? We're trying to, that was something even that was popular in some ways with some of the Trump audience, not that Trump did it. We're rethinking and we're trying to step back and undo some of our foreign policy commitments that theoretically cost so much money. But that's not really translating to a shrinking of the budget for these things.
No, that's a good point, Robbie. I think the thought going in was that Biden was going to end endless wars per the Democratic Party platform that was released a few months before the election. The problem is that he basically substituted one endless war for another. He did pull out of Afghanistan. He kept troops in Iraq. He just sort of relabeled it from combat to sort of train, advise, assist missions. Same deal in Syria. But the biggest fear of progressives is that he would double down on Trump's discourse vis-a-vis China where he would essentially continue the 2018 National Defense Strategy that really kind of put the spotlight on Russia and China as sort of near-peer threats, quote unquote. And basically the strategy calls for basically trying to outspend Russia and China when it comes to military spending. And that's basically what Biden chose to do. So credit for him for ending the war in Afghanistan, if it does play out that way regarding these over-horizon strikes. But still, he's sort of doubled down on this new Cold War framework that right now there's no strategy to end it. The strategy is to continue it.
And Stephen, we've been told repeatedly that we were spending $300 million a day in Afghanistan. So after the withdrawal, Congress decided to spend more money on the Pentagon. So where does that $300 million a day go? Like, that is a lot of money that's going somewhere else, because it's not going back to the taxpayer. It's not going to deficit reduction. It's not going anywhere else. It's not being spent in Afghanistan anymore. So where's it going?
Yeah, Ryan, the amount that the Senate and the House increased the military budget on top of Biden's request, which was itself over $12 billion on top of last year's budget, that was the amount that we were expected to save from Afghanistan. Pulling out would, kind of free up that like around 20 to $30 billion to redirect to social spending. But instead, Biden sort of just redirected it into the budget. He put a lot in research and development in his budget request. And to me, the way he structured his budget request, he was sort of asking for Congress to do a plus up in the way that they did, because Biden cut back on some very popular procurement programs, which Congress loves to plus up. So basically, Biden boosted R&D, research and development, and basically left room in for Congress to take that money that was supposed to be saved from Afghanistan and redirect it into very costly weapon systems.
It's just really amazing to me that people continue to fall for this over and over and over again when it comes to the military and the budget and increasing. And it's just, does anybody really in America have this feeling of a threat like Russia or China's actually going to bomb us or attack us or invade us? Or, it just seems so far-fetched. But there's this rhetoric that continues to circulate around, especially on the right, more so than the left. And, this just, we have to watch out for Russia and China and they're coming, or they're talking a lot about, what they're doing to our allies, because it is really far-fetched that they would come and invade us or attack us. So now the focus shifts to, other people in their region of the world. With Russia, it's Ukraine, or it's with China, it's Taiwan, right? And so we continue to raise the budget, continue to spend this money, continue to buy into this. Meanwhile, we're cutting back programs and cutting back money for the American people, while China's out there building these amazing trains. We talk about we wanted to have climate, reduce our carbon footprint. And then China unveils some train that they just worked on is it a fully electric or some green train? And we can't even pass an infrastructure package. It's just Biden, insane.
Yeah, it is important to bring that up. Sort of these differentiating versions of security and what it means in Congress based on their voting habits. It seems that security basically just is contingent on how much we spend on the military. But in everyday life, sort of, if you're not sort of in Congress or sort of in the 1%, the threats to your security ranging from just minor inconveniences to actual homelessness and lack of healthcare. That's spending that's achieved on the stuff you mentioned, such as healthcare, green infrastructure, education, housing aid. This is the stuff that really matters in sort of the everyday realm of life. And going back to what David Sirota was saying in the clip you played, he's basically saying, look, talk is cheap. So let's see why, if these programs are so popular among the electorate, but they're getting cut in Congress, but programs that are unpopular in the public are being increased, the Pentagon budget, then we have to really follow the money here and sort of not only sort of look at politics in sort of the way it should be looked at in terms of politics as the fight over who gets what, but also just explain why there's divisions in the Democratic Party regarding kind of negotiating themselves down and out of these immensely popular programs.
Okay. Stephen Semler, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
And we'll be back with more Rising right after this.